John S. Egan, United States Marine Corps, Korea, the Forgotten War. I had the great pleasure and opportunity of meeting and interviewing John in Wichita, Kansas. I was premiering my Vietnam film. It was 2006, November 14th. And John tells a great story. He's at the Chosin Reservoir, one of my Korean veterans. And he's served with the 1st Marine Division, 1st Battalion, 1st Marine Regiment, Weapons Company, 81 millimeter mortars. And tells a great story, folks. We lost John in 2010. He was 75 when I interviewed him in 2006, and his story lives on. Brandon Glidden, again, big thank you, sir, for helping me sponsor and share these stories from Korea. You have such a heart for these Korea veterans, and so many people have learned from this documentary series and this YouTube channel, Voices of History. So Brandon, thank you for making it possible for many people to learn, and that this history won't be forgotten. And folks, like I said, so many people have commented and told me that they've learned so much about the Korean War, the Vietnam War, World War II, the different battles in World War II. And I've interviewed veterans of the Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and I'm starting to share some of those on my YouTube channel and on my Voices of History radio channel. Did I tell you I have a radio channel now? Voices of History, KVOH, Grand Junction, Colorado. Folks, if you haven't listened, you're missing some things. You know, I know you're watching these videos, but get this into the hands of our young people, this radio station. I would really ask you to do that, because it's living history in the palm of their hands with all the technology today. They can download the apps in the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, type Voices of History, and it will pop Voices of History Radio. Download the app. It's just so great, so great. And thank you for all the people sponsoring and helping to keep this station, this YouTube channel, and the radio station up. It's just so greatly appreciated. Okay, folks, if you'd like to become a sponsor of these stories, please, there's information in the video description in this video. On my website, larrycapetto.com, click on Sponsor a Vet. You'll see a lot of pictures of some of my veterans. Just include their name in the sponsorship, and I'll feature it on this channel. Thank you for your help. If you'd like to donate to my work, there's also information in the comment section of this video. My heart's full as we go forward in this year, folks. So much going on, and these stories contain why we're free. If I had a prayer, it'd be for every young person to watch these stories, because soon it may be lost, folks. And I've encapsulated it. I've given us a glimpse into what it was like to be 18, 19 years old, serving your country, fighting for freedom, and walking down the streets today, free, getting on an airplane, whatever. We have these freedoms and all these amazing things. And we have an enemy that wants to stop it, but we're going to keep going. Amen? Okay. God bless you. Thank you for watching, sharing this channel, and listening to my new Voices of History radio. Talk to you soon. Tell me, what year did you go over to Korea?
1950.
Okay. And you're how old at this time?
19.
Wow.
Well, actually, I was 18. I had my 19th birthday there.
So tell me your 1st Marine Division, 1st Battalion.
1st Regiment.
Okay.
Weapons Company.
Weapons. So what was your job?
Mortars. 81 millimeter mortars.
So when a mortar goes off, what happens? Shrapnel flies around, or is that what happens?
Yeah, it drops a shell down a tube. It goes out, and hopefully it gets the bad guys.
And obviously this is your first time in combat over there?
Yes.
Can you tell me briefly why we were even in Korea, the United States? Why did we get involved over there?
Why did we get involved? Well, that was beyond mine. All I know is we got involved and we got called up to active duty. I can say this much: American military was down to nothing. Most football stadiums of that day had greater capacity than the number of men we had in the Marine Corps. So they had to activate all the reserves to come up with enough manpower to even provide a division, and that happened. Truman was the one that decided to go in. Remember, this is back in the era of the bad guy communist, everything, and Cold War really going good. And when North Korea launched their assault against South Korea, why then Truman sent us in.
So you're 19, or you just say you're 18, then you turn 19 over there?
Yes.
What month is your birthday?
September.
Okay.
So it happened right after I got there. I turned 19.
Okay. Let's start talking a little bit about Korea. Did you make the Incheon landing?
Yes.
Was that uneventful? It wasn't an amphibious landing, was it?
Yes.
It was?
Yes. One thing in reading about it, that was a pretty hazardous operation with the area in which the landing was conducted because of some tidal concerns. And most of the experienced military personnel, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff, were very leery of the Incheon landing. MacArthur got his way, and that's where we landed. But I found one comment he made real interesting. If the invasion should fail, the only thing that would suffer would be his reputation. I thought his reputation versus my butt was not a fair trade. So, at any rate, we did it. We were successful. And from there we went on and took Seoul. And then we came back to Incheon, boarded ships, and went around the peninsula for another landing.
Okay. Can you go grab the coffee? Because I don't want him to get interrupted, because we're going to get into some stuff now where I don't want to be interrupted. So see if she's coming with that coffee, because I don't want him to be interrupted.
Which direction?
To the right. And then down the other hallway to the left.
I'm inconveniencing everybody, huh?
No, you're fine. It's just I'm going to start asking some questions that
Okay.
I don't really want to get interrupted. So, but your MOS, you were a rifleman?
0333, and that was the mortars.
Okay, mortars. That's right. That's what you said. So, are you carrying something physically? Are you, like a gun of some kind?
Well, I wasn't. I started out carrying ammo.
Okay.
Had an ammo bag, was given 6 rounds of ammunition, and told to follow the guy in front of me. I didn't need boot camp to figure that out. So we went that way.
Okay. If my wife comes in, don't let it distract you, okay?
Okay.
Okay, because we need to get into some of this stuff. The camera is rolling, so. Okay, you make the Incheon landing. Was
Yeah.
there resistance when you landed?
I would call it very little resistance. The first part of the landing was on an offshore island from Incheon called Wambido. That was secured by a battalion of the 5th Marines. When we landed at Incheon itself, which was late in the day, because of the tidal considerations, our casualties were light.
From Incheon, where do you go?
We headed for Seoul.
And what happened there?
Well, the city burned. It was one hell of an urban renewal project, I can tell you that much. We took a lot of casualties. It was house-to-house fighting once we got into the city itself. The North Koreans had set up barricades at many of the major intersections, and we had to fight our way through those, which we successfully did, but it was tough.
You're fighting the North Koreans,
Correct.
the North Koreans. Was that a one-day operation, or that last several days, you remember, or what?
Actually, MacArthur took the city before we did. He announced it had been liberated, but it wasn't, and we kept fighting. I think it took us, as I recall, a couple days longer to take it than what he was able to do. If you get any sarcasm, they're good.
So from Seoul, where do you go?
We went back to Incheon, and boarded ship and went around the peninsula to land at a place called Wonsan.
Okay. And tell me just a little bit about Wonsan.
The bay there had been heavily mined. We couldn't get in. We would go north for 12 hours in the ship and then turn around and go south for 12 hours in the ship. We refer to this as Operation Yo-Yo. And we kept that up until they finally got the mines cleared out of the harbor and we were able to go in. But in the meantime, the South Koreans had liberated it long before we got there. And in fact, Bob Hope was ashore at Wonsan putting on a USO show. We didn't get to see that. We were on ship.
So what time of the year is this? Summer or?
It was October on
So
the
you-
Wonsan landing.
So you've turned 19.
Yes.
So how are you feeling? You feel like a battle-hardened Marine, or you feel like,
I don't know what one of those feels like. And I've never met one that said he felt that way.
well, you've been through a few skirmishes or
Yes.
conflicts. I mean,
Yeah.
how are you feeling as far as what's ahead?
No knowledge of what was ahead. We felt we were winning and winning real well, which we were at that point in time.
So it's October, getting into November. Where do you find yourself?
Okay. They split the 1st Marine Division up and scattered units all over God's creation. We went down to a little port town of Kojo, which was south of Wonsan. Then we came back, we spent a few days down there. Then we came back to Wonsan. They sent us inland to a little town called Meijani, which had a lot of guerrilla activity, and so did Kojo as far as that goes. We took a lot of casualties in both places. Then the 5th and 7th regiments were up north. They finally moved us up north, and they sent our battalion to a place called Chigong-ni, which was at the base of where the mountains get pretty steep a long ways up. We held there while the others went north, and then the Chinese came in, which they objected strenuously to us being there. But at any rate, once we started the withdrawal, if you've read history of that campaign, there was a bridge that was blown. Over one side was a steep cliff, the other one was straight down, and when they blew the bridge, there was no way they had to get another bridge in. That was the only way we could get out. The rest of the division was fighting their way south. We fought our way north. We took the hill mass that controlled that area, and they put the bridge in so the rest of them could get out.
So
That's it in a nutshell.
Is this November or?
This is December.
Well, let's go back to November. Where were you on? Do you remember where you were Thanksgiving of 1950?
Yeah, we were at Chigong-ni. They served a fantastic meal. Turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, cranberry sauce, all the goodies. And they had a chow deal set up. We went through a line with mess trays, and we went and sat down somewhere, and before we could eat it, it was frozen. But it still tasted pretty good. It was different than sea rations.
It was frozen. How cold was it? How cold was the weather at that time?
At that point in time, it was rocking below freezing. Once we got up on the hill, the temperatures, and of course I had no thermometer, this is reading history and talking to other people, temperatures were down to 30 below, and the winds were howling. And we all had on every bit of clothes we could wear. I even put a poncho on over the parka and everything, just to try to break the wind. But it was miserably cold. My hands and feet were frostbitten.
Has that affected you in later years?
Oh yeah,
Like how?
they hurt in any kind of cold weather. In fact, my feet are aching right now. I sleep with a hot water bottle in cold weather. And I don't know how much is in my head and how much is fact, but I know they're cold. Now in the summertime, it doesn't seem to bother me. But boy, once the weather turns cool, they bother me.
So you're 19 years old. You're in miserable conditions as it's cold, I suppose. I mean.
Yes.
What happens after Thanksgiving? Do you make a march up north, and lead me into engaging the Chinese? Where you were and what happened?
Okay, well, while we were at Chigong-ni, we had some units, and I can't remember whether they were North Korean or some Chinese. I don't think they were Chinese that we were fighting off and on. They were stragglers mainly from the North Korean Army. Once the Chinese came into the conflict, and the decision was made to pull out, why the 5th and 7th regiments consolidated and were working their way out. We attacked north, and this is in, I can't remember, it's late November, early December, but at any rate, in that time span. Just when we took off, Chigong-ni was located at the base of this plateau, and it was we left. The best I can remember, like midnight, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning was when we started out north. Also a snowstorm, a blizzard. You couldn't see from here to that wall. At any rate, that was beneficial to us. They couldn't see us coming. And we got awfully close to them before it dawned on them, hey, there's some people out there coming after us. And we successfully took the hill mass. I know the one rifle company, Able Company, that took the peak of that and went up with a full company, 250 some men, between killed, wounded, and either frostbite, freezing casualties that could no longer function. They had about 50% casualties, and that was over about a 3-day period from the time we got there to the time we left. Guesstimate on my part.
So are you behind enemy lines, or where are you positioned, and what are you doing?
Yeah, it's mostly shivering. No, our battalion is a compact unit. Yeah, we were cut off, but that's not the first time we ever were. Once we came through and we got down off that hill mass, there was a place, God, what was that thing called? It's where the 5th first met Chinese and defeated them.
Chigong-ni?
No, this was down south. Okay. This was south of Chigong-ni, Sudong Gorge. And at any rate, we got hit again down there and managed to fight our way through that. We walked for a long ways, and then as we got down to the level ground and got down off the hill, it got warm. I mean, comparatively, it wasn't 30 below or whatever it was. It felt warm. Eventually there were some trucks, and there was a train and that picked up a bunch of people, mostly wounded. And we rode trucks back to Hungnam. From there we boarded ship and went south.
Well, let's go back to the Chosin Reservoir. You went through that too quick for me. Okay.
All right.
I know there's a lot more that happened. Let me ask you some questions.
Remember this, I was not at the reservoir itself.
Right.
Our battalion was further south of the division.
Mm-hmm. But still, tell me about, you talked about the cold a little bit. Tell me about the Chinese. What type of person were they? How did they mount their attacks? And tell me anything that you know about that.
The Chinese, in my opinion, were exceptionally good troops. They fought hard, they fought well. They did not have as good a clothing and cold equipment as we did, and they suffered tremendously from the cold. We found many of them just frozen to death. They died. I know at one time, as we were working our way down off the hill, this guy shows up. How he got in our column and with us, I don't know. He was Chinese, and he was cold. And we found out in talking to him, he'd been a #1 houseboy in some town in China to some American personnel that were there after World War II. Now, he spoke a little English, and he was more than willing to help get a fire started or fix some coffee or anything else. Whenever you stopped long enough, you'd try to get something going, just to eat a little coffee. We didn't have water up there. Our canteens froze if you had anything in them. You ate snow. And that's where the saying came about, don't eat the yellow snow. You wanted the white snow. And I swear to God, we tried to melt snow in canteen cups for water. And I didn't know you could scorch water, but water will scorch, or snow will at any rate. So after that, we just ate the snow, just get a handful as we're going down. Food, of course your sea rations were frozen, there's really no way to thaw them. You chipped them with a K-bar. You know what a K-bar is? Okay. You chip the food out with that, put it in your mouth and let it dissolve. That caused some intestinal problems with a lot of the troops too, getting ice crystals down in the intestinal tract.
To get what in the intestinal tract? What's it called?
The icy food.
Oh, the icy. Yeah. What about sleeping? Where did you sleep, and did you sleep?
But we slept on top of the ground. You usually throw a poncho over your sleeping bag just to keep snow off. There was no way to dig in. The ground was frozen solid. There is some film around. I don't know who took it or where I saw it, but it shows some guys getting up in the morning, and they look just like graves, but they get up. They're under all that. And they had a poncho over them or a shelter half or something, not a tent pitch, but just something over their sleeping bags. You were cold, you were miserable, and the bad guys suffered worse than we did on that.
I can't imagine being cold for that long without catching a cold. I mean, do people catch colds? Do they get pneumonia? I mean, what happens?
Yes. Once we got out of there and got back south, we were located at Mason, which is in southern Korea. And sick bay, sick call was full of guys were hacking and wheezing and, yes, pneumonia, flu, whatever it all was. I don't think I had anything like that other than the frostbite, but a lot of the guys did. Sorry about my voice, but I'm going through puberty.
No, you're all right.
It's okay.
You're okay. What about your ammo, your guns, and your artillery? Did the cold affect that?
Yes, it did. On artillery, which I was not an artilleryman, but it definitely affected it. When you fire those pieces, you get a recoil action and goes back. All right, with as cold as it was, very slowly would the gun come back and go forward and be ready to fire again. A lot of our mortar shells, mostly with the 60 millimeter mortars, for some reason the ammo failed. I've heard that it was caused by the freezing weather that affected them, and they would not go as well. You never knew whether it was going to work or not. But you fired it and hoped.
What kind of weapons do the Chinese have?
Well, a mixture. They had Russian weapons, Russian burp guns, Russian rifles. They also had German rifles that had been captured by the Russians at the end of World War II. They had those weapons, German and Russian weapons, captured American weapons that the Chinese took from the nationalist forces when they beat them. They had a tremendous number of submachine guns.
Did you ever hear any bugles or whistles?
You know, I really can't swear I ever did. I've got buddies that swear they heard it, and I don't know if I just had so much over my head and ears I didn't hear it. But I didn't. I can't tell you I heard that.
Okay, that's fine. Did you yourself encounter the enemy up close, or were you always maybe back a little bit? Or?
I was always back a little bit. We had mortar fire on us. We lost some people from shrapnel from mortars. Not a large number of people. Looking back hindsight now, we're talking about over 50 years ago. Yeah, I don't think over half a dozen guys took shrapnel wounds. We had no one with small arms fire in that particular phase. That happened later on.
What kind of casualties were you around any of the casualties? Can you tell me anything about how many people were hurt or killed? Or?
Numbers I can't. I know that's written up in history, the number of KIA, MIA, WIA. I'm willing to bet good money that our greatest loss of people being hurt was from the cold. That many of those guys, and they probably shouldn't have been out there doing what they were doing, but they did it. And I know, tell you a couple of stories. One old gunny sergeant, he was a World War II veteran, and he put his campaign ribbons on his parka. And somebody asked him why. And he says, I want the Chinese to know that if they get me, they got a damn good Marine. So, and I watched another guy walk out. You could tell his feet were all screwed up, the way he was hobbling. They hurt, and it was hard and difficult for him to walk. But I know as I came out of the thing, I was following a weapons carrier with a trailer on the back, and the trailer was full of dead. We brought, to my knowledge, we brought most of our dead out. There were a couple instances where some were buried, and I can't remember if this was at Chigong-ni or where. And I know there was a cemetery set up again at Ham Hung before we were evacuated.
John, what was the hardest part of your job over there in Korea? What was the hardest thing that you had to do?
Stay warm. Beyond that particular campaign, one of the things the infantry suffers from quite a bit is sleep deprivation. You never get enough sleep. You're awake usually 2 hours and you sleep 2 hours, and you're awake 2 hours and you sleep 2 hours. And you can go to sleep at the drop of a hat. It doesn't take much to go off and just, you don't do it when it's hazardous, but however, I had a buddy sleep through a firefight. He never, didn't even know it went on until he woke up later. But the lack of sleep really gets to you.
Tell me just a little bit about the camaraderie of the Marine Corps.
It's something.
Sure, you take your time. Take a drink of coffee. I've heard it said that you don't leave your buddies behind, you watch out for each other. And I've talked to a lot of Marines, and they all say the same thing pretty much.
You watch the guy, watch out for the one on the right and on the left. You don't worry about yourself. Go for it, a different subject.
Okay. So you told me that you were to the south of the other regiments or what have you. I mean,
Yes.
You're all part of the 1st Marine Division.
Yes.
Okay, so are you up there for several weeks, or how long were you up there?
Oh, geez. You know, I honestly don't remember.
Okay, that's all right. Well, I heard it went for about a month. Is that the whole campaign? Is that something that...
And that would surely be in the ballpark.
Yeah. So, were you aware of the Army at all? Was the Army up there fighting too?
Yes.
At one point before or after you were there?
We had 2 battalions of the 7th Infantry Division that were on the east side of the reservoir and were hit hard by the Chinese and just damn near obliterated. They suffered horrendous casualties up there.
Do you have any reason why? Did you hear why? I heard they were overrun, and was it they were outnumbered, or what do you think happened?
I think you can owe it to the stupidity of MacArthur and his chief of staff, which was a guy named Allman. He loved to fight wars on a map. He had no concept of time, terrain, and distance. The units were isolated so bad that if any one of them got in trouble, it would be damn near impossible for somebody to come to help them. And that's what happened to them. And if you detect I don't have any love for MacArthur and his buddy, you're right. And I'm keeping my comments clean. The lady is president.
Well, you just speak what's on your mind. That's all right. And but as far as the Army, I heard that there were some problems there. Is that why the Marines went up there to help, or what? I mean,
No. Both the 7th Division, part of the 7th Division was up there. The Marines went up there also. We were supposedly on our way to the Yalu, which was the border between Manchuria and North Korea. We also had the 3rd Army Division came up and was doing some stuff to the west of us, but south of the reservoir area. They would have been back Chigong-ni and south on the left flank.
now are you carrying any like an M1 or anything, or you
I was
just...
carried, I carried a carbine, which was a worthless weapon in the cold, and found out it didn't work too well, and I got an M1. M1 was a good weapon. You had to keep it dry. You didn't want a lot of oil on it because of the coal, which would gel, solidify, whatever you want to call it. We in these isolated units we were in, we were getting airdrops for supplies because the roads were closed. You couldn't get through. And they would drop things like ammo, gas, first aid supplies, whatever, you know. And this one drop they made, they dropped PX rations. In the PX rations were condoms. The old colonel gets on the radio and calls back to the rear and asks, what do you think we're doing to the Chinese? But we found out they had a practical purpose. You could put them over the muzzle of your weapon and the snow wouldn't get in it. And I have seen some film, I can't remember if it was the M1 carbine what, you could tell this guy had a condom on the muzzle because there is this stuff hanging from where it got hot and he was firing it. But anyway, it's kind of decorative there.
You remember eating Tootsie Rolls?
Oh, yes.
Tell me a little bit about Tootsie Rolls.
Tootsie Rolls were something you could shove in your mouth, and after you broke it off, you know, you put it in your mouth, and slam your jaw shut, and get it in there. It was sugar. It was an energy food. We also just ate the sugar chunks that were in our sea rations. Where they came from, I don't know, but I do know this. We have an organization called the Chosin Few, okay, survivors of the campaign. At all our reunions, the Tootsie Roll Company furnishes Tootsie Rolls. We got Tootsie Rolls by the ton, and we all eat them, just like we did then.
I had one Marine tell me that was played an important part in his survival, was having that little bit of nourishment.
I can believe that. And this might be surprising to you too, but some of the people that were wounded bad, which would have caused massive bleeding because of the cold weather, it solidified, it froze. And in many respects, they owe their life in a way to that cold weather. Now, that's kind of a long ways to get help, but it worked. I mean, not in all cases, but in some it did.
Why do you think they call Korea the Forgotten War? You ever heard that?
Yeah. I don't know. Those of us who were there remember it. I know sometimes, not all, but a few of the Vietnam vets complain about they didn't have any parades when they came home. And who the hell wants a parade? When I got home, I didn't want to walk down a street. I wanted to go on leave, or I wanted to go on liberty. I don't need to walk in a parade. And I don't walk in parades today either. I don't like to walk.
Well, what about Veterans Day? What does Veterans Day mean to you?
El Dorado has always put on a real fine Veterans Parade. And a lot of the guys over there do a heck of a job. I go to the parades. I don't get in them, but I watch them go by. And I'm interested in seeing the type of military equipment we have today, which usually comes down from, what's the fort? Kansas.
Fort Smith?
No, that's Arkansas. Well, whatever.
Okay. Well, you were there. I mean, you know, the Forgotten War, like you said, you were there. A lot of you were there. You belong to the Chosin Few?
Yes.
Do you go to the reunions?
I didn't this year.
Las Vegas, was it this year?
Yes.
Is there one next year, or is it every 2 years?
Well, in the past, it was every 2 years, but it seemed like lately it's been every year. And I know a lot of us from the old platoon show up. And the last one I was at, Our old company commander was there, our platoon commander was there, and probably 8, 10 guys that were in the platoon were there. So we had a great time, great reunion. And our platoon lieutenant, which was a guy by the name of Scotty Harris, had served in World War II. He had fought on, I believe it was Saipan, and then Okinawa. And he was finally old enough to join the Marine Corps when he was on Okinawa. He was 17. Then when the war ended, he got out and he went to college, and he had just graduated when the Korean War popped. He never finished high school, by the way, and was commissioned a brand new second lieutenant, and he was 21 years old. He was just a couple years older than the rest of us, but very experienced. He made the comment to me one time we were visiting after, and we were talking about Purple Hearts. And he said, I have one Purple Heart that's kind of iffy, but the first two hurt like hell. So he was a great guy.
John, tell me about combat. What's the sound of combat sound like?
Have you ever been on a rifle range? Have you ever been down in the butts where they're running the targets up and down? Okay, you can hear the rounds go by. They sing, zip, whatever you want to call it. The bad guys had a 76 millimeter small arm cannon that it was a direct line of fire type thing as far as I know. You could almost hear it when it went off, and it just screamed. It sounded like it was going to land in your left hip pocket all the time. That was a little hairy. Incoming mortar rounds, if it was quiet enough where you could hear them, there would be a little bit of a whir, a whistle, a whoo, and then a cutout explosion. Small arms, it was noisy. Tracers, watching tracers go both ways. Theirs were green, ours were red. That was a major difference. But tracers work both ways. If you're firing them, you can see where you're hitting, they can see where it's coming from. So.
What about the wounded? Were you able to help people that got wounded, or was that just a corpsman, or did you get to help anybody?
Tell you one which I think is funny. Yeah, we helped our wounded. The corpsman was taking care of major stuff. We had a guy with minor wounds. You could help him down, do whatever, if you weren't needed to keep fighting somebody, or they could hobble back on their own. But this one time we were being hit pretty good. And there was this road, and it went through a cut, and there was a little cliff, maybe, road cut, 7 or 8 feet high. We were up on it firing, and all of a sudden this one guy let out of a heck of a yelp. He had been hit. He got hit in the butt. And I helped him down from there, and it had to have been painful. He had tears in the eyes. That just gotta hurt. But he was talking about what I'll tell him. And the old story was you got hit in the ass if you were running. And he wasn't, but he still got hit in the butt.
Is that $1 million wound?
No, it's probably back to the rear and some Band-Aids and stay a while and come back. I had a buddy that got it through the arm on the way to Seoul and bicep, and he was gone about a week and came back with a Band-Aid on both sides. So.
What was your rank at that time?
I was a PFC.
Okay. So are you firing rounds up towards the Chinese, or what are you doing? I mean,
when we were up there, yes, our mortar squad, we fired. In fact, I had a map. I still have it somewhere, but I would darn if I know where it was. The lieutenant gave me years later that showed some of our concentrations where we were firing when we were up there. And you've got to understand, and how those maps work, that the area that's marked is usually a pencil dot. I mean, it's not big picture type thing and noted.
So you're spending your time, were they calling on the radio and saying, we want you to fight?
Yeah, we had forward observers with each of the rifle companies, and when they wanted mortar fire, they would call back, give us a target area, and we would fire whatever they wanted and go that route. Usually there was some adjustments made and then a fire for effect.
So a mortar round is how big?
Two different sizes. We had the lights, which weighed about 8 pounds, as I recall. The mediums, maybe 12.
So these tube mortars, if come out of a tube or a can?
Tube.
So
You drop them down the tube.
And then what?
They hit a firing pin down the base of that tube. And if you're lucky, everything ignites and it comes out. And that's where those are set off.
And then they explode and they emit shrapnel?
Yes, yes.
What about the snow? Wouldn't the snow cover them up?
It could muffle it. But when we were up on those hills, that snow was not that heavy. The other thing is, our heavier rounds, you could cut a fuse on them where you get aerial burst, or they would hit and detonate when they hit the ground, or cut them where they would explode hopefully so many feet above the ground.
So you saw Chinese, were they alive, were they dead, the Chinese that you saw?
Yes, in both cases.
What are they wearing? You said do they have coats? Or?
They were wearing a padded coat and padded trousers. And I've had other guys tell me that worked with them later that they had they had summer uniforms, and then over that they wore their winter uniforms. But they suffered. Their cold got to them too.
So you never got into a situation where you're using your carbine or anything?
Only one time, but not up there.
Do you think it's important that we remember Korea and what happened there and the Chosin Reservoir as far as history's sake? Do you think that's important as a society?
I think it's important for one reason is that we were written off up there. We weren't going to make it. But our leadership and our people proved you don't ever write us off. And the troops today, I think, understand that. Not only our example, but I know of some examples in Vietnam. I know, of course, a lot of examples from World War II where you'd think they wouldn't, but they did.
So true, once a Marine, always a Marine?
Yes.
So I'm assuming you're proud to be a Marine.
Yes.
Have people ever thanked you for your service to our country?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel when they thank you? I mean, and where do they thank you at? Down at the mall or on the street or?
Oh, on the street. Usually it happens on Veterans Day.
Yeah.
I still wear the ring.
Good. And you got to tell me a little bit about the pride of the Marine Corps, because I talked to Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Merchant Marines. I mean, why does the Marine Corps have so much pride about themselves, what they do? Where does that come from? Your training?
Yes. We're a bit of an egotist. We think we're good. We are good. We'll prove it.
Can I ask you, did you lose friends in Korea? Wounded, killed?
And missing in action.
Were you near these people, or you just
No.
heard about it later?
No. The friend that was, we don't know what happened to him. This one squad was overrun. And when we got back up there, we found a lot of dead bodies and a couple wounded. But there were some that were missing that weren't there. And from some captured, and these were Koreans in this case, in interrogating them, we found out that they did take off some prisoners. And he never came back.
The North Koreans took prisoners?
Yes.
So that's before the Chinese got involved, or?
Yes, just prior.
So when you guys got to Korea, you basically chased the North Koreans out of South Korea, basically over the 38th parallel.
Yes.
And that's when the Chinese came down?
Yes,
So we're fighting the Chinese in Korea.
yes.
Is it basically in combat or war, is it ours is not to reason why, but to do and die? Is it like that?
I wouldn't say you have to die. I like what Patton said about that. Let the other son of a bitch die for his country. And, I don't know if there's such a thing as a heroic death or not. It's dirty, it's nasty.
Well, you know what? I told the group last night at the showing here.
Mm-hmm.
I said, our young people are looking for role models and heroes. I said, I found my heroes. I consider you guys, I know you probably don't consider yourself a hero, but we do, but for what was done. And I think it needs to be recognized, and that's one reason why I'm producing all of this. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and so forth. But let me ask you this, John. Being a Korean veteran and an American citizen, tell me about what freedom means to you and the price for freedom.
I don't know. I'm at perfect liberty to tell government people to go to hell if I don't like what they're doing, and I can say it that way. And I don't get thrown in the brig or anything. They might look at me like an idiot, but you still have that right. You can go as far as your natural abilities will take you. The only thing that's going to stop you is your own limitations. Is there any luck involved in that? There probably is. But it's still basically your own limitations that are going to hold you to whatever. You can pursue anything you want. You might find it good, you might find it's not so good. You might find it difficult, and you might find that, hey, I didn't like this after, I'll go do something else. But you have the privilege of doing that.
Well, what about the price for freedom? What would you tell a young person about the price for freedom and liberty and the fact that men and women have died and were wounded and killed? I mean, to me, that's the price for freedom. What do you think?
It is the price of freedom. Some guy told me one time the western United States could be speaking Japanese, the eastern United States could be speaking German. In many ways, the American people will advertise very strongly the fact that, hey, we are peace-loving people. And if you don't believe it, we'll beat the hell out of you to prove it. Not in my territory, not in my house, whatever you want to call it. We will fight for certain things. And I think a lot of people don't recognize what we will fight for sometimes. Life, liberty, food or happiness, mom's apple pie, whatever. But we'll also fight for oil. We'll also fight for other raw products.
When you were in Korea, were you conscious of fighting for God and country, or was it a matter of survival?
No, and sometimes this tears up people who are trying to make super patriots out of us. You're fighting because your buddy's fighting, and you're not going to desert him. Yeah, we were sent there by our government. We were sent there to do a job. We're doing it. But we're not looking over our shoulder saying, hey, government, we're doing it for you. That doesn't enter into it, in my opinion. And I think there's a lot of guys that feel the way I do about it. You do it because your buddy's there. And I can recall one instance of this reservist that got called back to active duty. And when he was being interviewed, he said he was a pacifist. He didn't, what's a conscientious objector now. And so some officer asked him, he said, what if you were in this foxhole, you had a weapon, and the North Koreans were charging you? What would you do? Kid said, I don't know, sir. And he said, you're going to find out. Now, you're put in a position, you know, them or me, you know what your choices are. But I had no visions of pursuing life, liberty, and whatever.
What does the American flag mean and represent to you?
I still get a lump watching it. My dad retired in the Marine Corps as a colonel, and I didn't do as well. I only made buck sergeant, and my brother was also in the Marine Corps, and he was also an enlisted man. I've had 2 sons serve in the Marine Corps.
When you came home from Korea, did it bother you, the war? Did you put it away and not talk about it for 40 or 50 years?
No. I think, you know, a lot of guys don't want to talk about it. But I'm almost convinced in some ways the ones that won't talk about it are the ones that are going to crack up. And you'll talk about it easier to your own people. And I'm talking about that served with you. We can tell all kind of hellacious stories to each other. And they're not gory, they're funny, they're humorous, this type of thing. Noises bothered us, at least me, for a long time afterwards. I remember going to a movie when I first got back to the States. It was a Western. And usually when the bad guys shoot at the good guys, they show the good guy riding his horse and the bad guy with his rifle and the good guy, you know, he used to lead in. Well, this one didn't do that. He just fired. And 2 of us sitting there, we just slid out of our seats. And it was goosey. Noises, sharp noises. Anything that can resemble an explosion that you're not ready for, you'll jump or duck down. It'll take you a while to get over that. Some guys probably never get over it, but that's going to vary with individuals.
Sure. And any problems with sleeping, nightmares like some of the guys?
No. I've never had I dream about it once in a while, but it's never anything bad. So, thankful for that.
That's good to hear. That, you know. Did you talk much about Korea though after the war, or is it just recently, or just with me? I mean, have you?
No. In fact, I've talked to high school history classes. Not from the beginning, but it was several years ago. I had a history instructor there at the school in Towanda, in high school, and he had, as they studied World War II, they'd have World War II veterans come in, and Korea veterans, Vietnam veterans come in. And the kids could ask them questions and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it was great.
Good. How big's where you live? How big's the city?
I don't live in the city, I live in the country.
Well, you said, what was it, Rwanda? What did you call it?
Towanda.
Towanda, yeah.
Oh, Lord. I don't even know if there's 2,000 people live in that
Did they have
town.
a high school there?
Well, it's a rural high school.
Okay. So that's good.
It runs between Wichita city limits and Augusta city limits and El Dorado city limits. So it's a big geographical area.
I'd be interested in talking to the schools, because I go into schools and show a portion of my films and bring a veteran. Maybe you can come with me sometime.
What school are you going to?
Don't know yet. We're gonna set something up. Might even be here in Wichita.
I'll tell you what you do. I did this in one high school. I don't remember which one now. Before you give your talk, go to the high school library. Ask to see a list of the books on the Korean War. If they have one,
Pretty short
they're
list.
doing good.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point.
But they have a lot on World War II, of course, and they have beginning to get quite a few on Vietnam.
Well, that's why we're talking today. I'm on the verge of releasing my first Korean documentary. It's going to be good.
Okay.
It's going to be good. You're part of it now.
All right. Well, I get information on when it's going to be
Oh,
available.
yes, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Before you leave today, there's my business card too, but before you leave today, we'll be talking about that. But
All right.
you're going to maybe bring me some pictures down tomorrow, or how are you going to get me some pictures?
I'll probably mail it to you,
Okay,
if that's all right
fine,
with you.
and I'll mail it back.
They're not going to be any big.
It's okay, anything,
Yeah.
anything that you might have. But
Okay.
let's just finish up the interview here, John. We're just about done.
All right.
But I appreciate you talking to me. I think maybe you've told me some things. I don't know, maybe you've not told other people. I think your interview was very sincere, and I was very touched by it. Do you have any closing remarks about anything? If not, we're done. I mean,
No.
anything else about Korea? I can
No.
sense you've got a lot of pride in the Marine Corps. Your father, your sons, yourself. It's pretty impressive.
I was there. I was scared spitless, but I got back.
One more question. What should people remember about Korea today?
Good Lord. Well, I tell you what. You look. There's a map. I believe National Geographic puts it out. It's a satellite photo of Korea, taken at night. You can tell where the 38th parallel is, because below it it's lit up like a Christmas tree. North of there, not many lights, very few. And yet they have all that hydraulic power up there from the reservoir. We didn't hurt that. We did not destroy that or anything. Maybe we should have. But at any rate, they're a backward country. They're a poor country. And the idiot they got leading them, which is the son of the guy that was the dictator when we were over there, is not doing much for them. In fact, they've lost thousands just from starving to death.
Can you do me one more thing before we stop? And I understand the protocol about a salute, but for the camera's sake, when I tell you to, could you look into the camera and give me a salute from where you're sitting right now?
Semper Fi, Mac.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.